Grandpa Hank, Mom and Dad are going to make you sick tonight so they can take all your money, 9-year-old Sage whispered as she tugged my sleeve during what I thought was just another family barbecue in my backyard. My name is Hank Henderson, and at 72 years old, I thought I'd seen every kind of betrayal life could throw at me. I'm a retired aerospace engineer who spent 4 decades designing navigation systems for commercial aircraft. I've got a sharp mind, a paid-off house in suburban Phoenix, and about $2.3 million in retirement savings that I plan to leave to my family when I'm gone. I became a widower 18 months ago when my beloved wife Dolores lost her battle with cancer. Since then, my son Garrett and his wife Bryn have been increasingly concerned about my ability to live alone. My daughter Carmen lives across town with her own family, and then there's little Sage, Garrett and Bryn's 9-year-old daughter who's always been the light of my life. But as I nearly choked on my burger at Sage's whispered words, I realized that everything I thought I knew about my family was about to change forever. Her words hit me like a punch to the gut, but I forced myself to stay calm. Kids say strange things all the time, right? Maybe she misunderstood something she overheard. But the way Sage looked around nervously before speaking, the way her little voice trembled, that wasn't the behavior of a confused child making up stories. What do you mean, sweetheart? I asked, crouching down to her eye level. Sage glanced toward the patio where her parents, my son Garrett and his wife Bryn, were laughing with my daughter Carmen. I heard Daddy tell Mommy they're going to put medicine in your iced tea to make you act crazy, she whispered even quieter. Then they're going to say you can't take care of yourself anymore. If you've ever felt betrayed by the people closest to you, you'll understand why what happened next changed everything. Make sure you're subscribed to Revenge Extraordinary because this story gets darker than you can imagine. My blood ran cold. For a moment, I couldn't breathe. 43 years of marriage to my beloved Dolores, 40 years working as an aerospace engineer, raising 2 children, building a life, was my own family really planning to destroy me? I looked over at Garrett, my 45-year-old son who still lived paycheck to paycheck despite my constant financial help over the years. Then at Bryn, his wife of 12 years, who'd been out of work for 6 months and made no secret of her bitterness about their money troubles. They were both hovering near the drink station I'd set up on the patio table. Sage, honey, are you sure that's what you heard? I asked. She nodded solemnly. Mommy was measuring something from a little bottle into the tea pitcher. When I asked what it was, she said it was just vitamins to help you feel better. But then I heard them talking in their bedroom about how you have too much money for one old man. My hands started shaking. Not from fear, from rage. But I couldn't let that show, not yet. I needed to think like the engineer I'd been for 4 decades. This was a problem that required careful analysis and a strategic solution. Thank you for telling me, Sage. But let's keep this between us for now, okay? Grandpa needs to figure some things out. She nodded and skipped back toward the other kids playing in the yard. I stood up slowly, my mind racing. Over the past 6 months since Dolores passed away, both Garrett and Bryn had been unusually attentive. Always asking about my finances, my forgetfulness, whether I was taking my medications properly. I'd thought they were just concerned about me living alone. Now I saw it differently. They'd been building a case. I walked toward the drink station, keeping my expression neutral. Bryn was standing there with her back to me, and I watched as she quickly screwed the cap back onto a small brown bottle and slipped it into her purse. Everything okay, Bryn? I asked casually. She spun around, startled. Oh. Hank, you scared me. Yes, everything's fine. I was just tidying up a bit. That's thoughtful of you. I picked up the pitcher of iced tea. This looks refreshing. You make this? I helped, she said with a smile that didn't reach her eyes. Added some honey and a few other things to make it extra healthy for you. Extra healthy. Right. I poured myself a glass, watching Bryn's face carefully. She looked eager, almost excited. Well, cheers to family, I said, raising the glass. Cheers, she replied, but I noticed she didn't pour herself any tea. I pretended to take a sip, then set the glass down. Actually, I think I need something stronger. It's been a long day. Disappointment flashed across her face for just a second before she recovered. Of course, Dad. Whatever you need. Dad. She'd been calling me that more often lately, ever since Dolores died. Building familiarity, making herself seem more like family than an in-law. How long had they been planning this? I excused myself and went inside to the bathroom, but instead of using it, I pulled out my phone and called Carmen. Hey, Dad, everything okay? She answered. Carmen, I need to ask you something, and I need you to be completely honest with me. Has Garrett talked to you about my mental state recently? There was a pause. Dad, why are you asking? Please, just answer me. Well, yes. He's mentioned that he's worried about you. Says you've been forgetting conversations, misplacing things, seeming confused sometimes. He asked if I'd noticed anything similar. My heart sank. And what did you tell him? I told him I hadn't really noticed anything major, but that grief can affect people in different ways. Dad, you're scaring me. What's going on? I'll explain later. Did he say anything else? Anything about doctors or financial concerns? Another pause. He did mention that maybe we should talk to your doctor about getting you evaluated. And he asked if you'd updated your will recently or if you'd given anyone power of attorney. There it was. The full picture started coming together like pieces of a complex engineering blueprint. They weren't just planning to drug me, they'd been systematically building a case for months that I was becoming incompetent. Carmen, I need you to listen carefully. Don't react, don't say anything to Garrett yet, but I think they're trying to have me declared mentally incompetent so they can take control of my finances. Dad, that's a serious accusation. Are you sure? I'm going to prove it. But I need your help. Can you remember any other conversations you've had with Garrett about me? As Carmen recounted several more instances of Garrett expressing concern about my mental state, I realized how sophisticated their plan really was. They weren't just going to drug me once and claim I was incompetent. They were building a documented pattern of decline that multiple family members could testify to. After I hung up with Carmen, I stood in my bathroom looking at myself in the mirror. At 72, I was still sharp. I could still solve complex engineering problems, manage my own finances, and take care of myself perfectly well. But if they succeeded in their plan, none of that would matter. I walked back outside, where the family gathering was in full swing. Garrett was flipping burgers on the grill, Bryn was chatting with some neighbors who'd stopped by, and the kids were playing cornhole on the lawn. It looked like a perfect family scene. But now I saw it for what it really was, theater. Dad, you okay? Garrett asked as I approached the grill. You look a little pale. Just tired, I said. You know how it is at my age. He exchanged a quick glance with Bryn. Maybe you should sit down, take it easy. Have some of that iced tea Bryn made, it's got electrolytes and vitamins. That's thoughtful, I said. But I think I'll stick with water for now. As the afternoon wore on, I noticed more things. How Bryn kept pushing the iced tea. How Garrett steered conversations toward my forgetfulness. How they both seemed to be performing concern rather than feeling it. But the most disturbing thing was how they involved Sage. When I missed catching a frisbee that was thrown poorly, Bryn immediately said, "See, Sage. Grandpa's reflexes aren't what they used to be. That's why Mommy and Daddy worry about him." They were conditioning my own granddaughter to expect and accept my decline. By the time everyone left that evening, I'd made my decision. I wasn't going to confront them directly, that would only force them to change tactics or accelerate their timeline. Instead, I was going to do what I'd done my entire career, gather data, analyze the problem, and engineer a solution. The next morning, I did something I hadn't done in years, I pretended to be confused. When Garrett called to check on me, I made my voice slightly slower, more uncertain. "Oh, hi. Garrett, right? Sorry, I was just, what day is it again?" "It's Tuesday, Dad. Are you feeling alright?" "Tuesday, yes, Tuesday. I'm fine, just a little foggy this morning. Must not have slept well." I could practically hear him taking notes. "Dad, maybe I should come over and check on you." No, I'm fine. Just need my coffee." After I hung up, I felt sick to my stomach. But if I was going to catch them in the act, I needed them to believe their plan was working. Over the next few days, I began researching elder financial abuse online. What I discovered was both terrifying and educational. Medication-induced cognitive impairment was a real thing, and it was more common than I'd imagined. Certain combinations of drugs could create symptoms that looked exactly like dementia or Alzheimer's disease. I also learned about the legal process for declaring someone incompetent. It required medical documentation, family testimony, and a court hearing. But in cases where the person appeared to be deteriorating rapidly, temporary guardianship could be granted quickly to prevent financial harm. That's when I realized how sophisticated Garrett and Bryn's plan really was. They weren't just trying to steal from me, they were trying to legally steal from me. I started installing security cameras around my house, using skills I'd learned in aerospace engineering to hide them effectively. I placed recording devices in my kitchen, living room, and near the front door. If they were going to drug me, I was going to have evidence. I also called my neighbor, Lester Kowalski, a retired doctor who lived 2 houses down. Lester and I had been friends for 15 years, and I trusted him completely. "Lester, I need a medical consultation, but I need you to keep it confidential." When I explained the situation, Lester was both shocked and professionally intrigued. "Hank, if someone is drugging you with psychiatric medications or sedatives, there would be detectable symptoms and potentially dangerous interactions with your current medications. That's what I need to know. If I start showing signs of cognitive impairment, I want you to observe and document everything. And if possible, I want to know what they're giving me." Lester agreed to help, and he gave me some small containers for collecting samples if I could manage it safely. 3 days later, Garrett called with some news that confirmed my worst suspicions. "Dad, I made you a doctor's appointment for tomorrow morning. Dr. Patel wants to see you for a routine checkup." "I don't remember scheduling any appointment," I said, letting confusion creep into my voice. "You didn't. I scheduled it for you because I'm worried about some of the things you've been saying and doing lately." "What things?" "Like yesterday when you called me 3 times asking what day it was. And last week when you forgot you'd already paid your electric bill and paid it again." I had never called him asking what day it was, and I certainly hadn't double paid any bills. But I played along. "Oh, did I do that? I don't remember." "That's exactly what I'm worried about, Dad. Dr. Patel just wants to make sure everything's okay." After I hung up, I sat in my chair trying to process the magnitude of their deception. They weren't just planning to drug me, they were creating false evidence of cognitive decline to present to a doctor. That evening, Bryn and Garrett came over with dinner to take care of me. Bryn had made a casserole and fresh lemonade. I watched carefully as she prepared our drinks, and sure enough, she added something to mine from a small bottle she kept in her purse. "This is delicious," I said after pretending to eat and drink. "What's your secret ingredient?" "Just a little honey and some herbal supplements," she said. "Good for circulation and mental clarity." Mental clarity. The irony was almost too much to bear. About an hour after dinner, I started feeling genuinely drowsy and slightly disoriented. Whatever they were giving me was real, and it was affecting me physically. I managed to collect a sample of the remaining lemonade in one of Lester's containers before I went to bed. At this point, I realized my own children were willing to destroy my mind to steal my life's work. If you're enjoying this story of ultimate family betrayal, hit that subscribe button on Revenge Extraordinary, because the revenge I had planned was just getting started. The next morning, I met Lester early before my doctor's appointment. He tested the lemonade sample and found traces of lorazepam, a powerful anti-anxiety medication that could cause confusion, memory problems, and disorientation, especially in elderly patients. "Hank, this is dangerous," Lester said. "If they're giving you this regularly, especially combined with other substances, it could cause real cognitive damage." "Then we need to move fast," I said. At the doctor's appointment, I continued my performance while secretly recording everything on a small device I'd hidden in my shirt pocket. Garrett and Bryn accompanied me, and I watched in amazement as they provided Dr. Patel with a detailed list of my supposed symptoms and concerning behaviors. "He's been calling family members repeatedly asking the same questions," Bryn said with perfect fake concern. "Yesterday he couldn't remember how to work his coffee maker. He seems confused about dates and times," Garrett added. "And he's become very suspicious of people, even family members." Dr. Patel, a kind woman in her 50s, listened carefully and began asking me questions. I played my part, acting slightly confused and disoriented, while internally marveling at the detailed fiction my family had created about my mental state. "Mr. Henderson, your family is concerned about some cognitive changes. How are you feeling?" I feel fine, mostly. Sometimes I get a little mixed up, but doesn't everyone? Have you been taking any new medications? Any changes to your routine? I don't think so. Bryn helps me with my medications sometimes. Dr. Patel made notes and recommended some cognitive testing and blood work. She also suggested that the family might want to consider having a discussion about care planning and financial management. In cases where cognitive function is declining, she said, it's important to have safeguards in place to protect the patient's interests. Garrett and Bryn exchanged a meaningful look. Their plan was working perfectly. After the appointment, I went straight to my attorney, Veronica Thorne, whom I'd worked with for over 20 years. Veronica was a sharp woman in her 60s who specialized in elder law. "Hank, what you're describing could constitute elder abuse, fraud, and conspiracy," she said after reviewing my evidence. "But we need to be very careful about how we proceed. What do you recommend?" "First, we secure your assets immediately. I'll draft papers removing any existing power of attorney and creating new protections. Second, we document everything they're doing. And third, when we have enough evidence, we expose them in a way that protects you legally." Over the next 2 weeks, I continued my double life. During the day, I played the confused, declining grandfather. But secretly, I was gathering evidence with the precision of an engineer documenting a system failure. I recorded conversations where Garrett and Bryn discussed their plans. I documented every instance of drugging. I kept detailed notes of their false claims about my behavior. And Lester helped me understand the medical implications of what they were doing to me. The most heartbreaking part was watching how they manipulated Sage. They would have conversations about Grandpa's condition in front of her, conditioning her to expect my decline. When I deliberately acted confused during one of their visits, I saw genuine worry in my granddaughter's eyes. "Is Grandpa sick?" she asked her mother. "Grandpa's brain isn't working as well as it used to," Bryn explained with fake sadness. "That's why Mommy and Daddy need to help take care of him." Meanwhile, I was secretly meeting with financial advisors to protect my assets, consulting with Lester about the medical evidence, and working with Veronica to build an airtight legal case. The breaking point came when Bryn suggested a family meeting to discuss Dad's care needs. "I think it's time we talked about getting power of attorney," she said during one of their visits. "Dr. Patel thinks it would be good to have someone managing his finances before things get worse." "I don't want to be a burden," I said, playing my part. "You're not a burden, Dad," Garrett said, but I could see the calculation in his eyes. "We just want to make sure you're protected." "Protected? From what? From having control over my own life?" That night, I made the final preparations for my counterattack. I arranged for Sage to spend the weekend with Carmen, ostensibly so she wouldn't have to see Grandpa acting confused. In reality, I wanted her away from what was about to happen. I also coordinated with Lester and Veronica for what I was calling the competency meeting, the gathering where Garrett and Bryn thought they would finally convince Dr. Patel to recommend guardianship proceedings. What they didn't know was that their grandfather had spent 40 years solving complex engineering problems, and they had just become his latest project. Stay tuned to Revenge Extraordinary because this revenge was about to go nuclear. The morning of the meeting, I felt genuinely nervous for the first time in weeks. Not because I was afraid their plan would work, but because I was about to destroy my relationship with my son forever. But when I thought about what they were willing to do to me, when I thought about how they'd manipulated Sage and lied to Carmen and Dr. Patel, my resolve strengthened. The meeting was set for 2 p.m. at Drive Patel's office. Garrett and Bryn arrived early, probably to brief the doctor on my latest, concerning behaviors. I arrived exactly on time, carrying a briefcase that they assumed contained the power of attorney documents I was supposedly ready to sign. "How are you feeling today, Mr. Henderson?" Dr. Patel asked as we settled into her office. "Much better, actually," I said, my voice suddenly clear and strong. "In fact, I feel sharper than I have in weeks." Garrett and Bryn looked confused. This wasn't part of their script. "Dad, maybe you should sit down," Garrett said. "You seemed pretty confused this morning when we talked." "Did I?" "That's interesting, because I don't remember talking to you this morning." I opened my briefcase and pulled out a thick folder. "Dr. Patel, I need to show you something important." "Mr. Henderson, perhaps we should focus on the concerns your family has raised," she said gently. "Oh, we're absolutely going to focus on those concerns. But first, I want you to hear some recordings I've made over the past 3 weeks." I pulled out a small digital recorder and placed it on Dr. Patel's desk. Garrett and Bryn looked like they'd seen a ghost. "What is that?" Bryn asked, her voice shaking. "Evidence," I said simply, and pressed play. The first recording was from 2 weeks earlier, when they thought I was napping in my chair. Their voices filled the office. "Bryn, the lorazepam is working perfectly. He's getting more confused every day." "Garrett, are you sure we're giving him enough? We need him incapacitated before the family starts asking questions." "Bryn, trust me, I've researched this. A few more weeks of this dosage and any doctor will see clear cognitive impairment." Dr. Patel's face went white. Garrett started to speak, but I held up my hand and played the next recording. This one was from the previous week. "Garrett, Dr. Patel is starting to take our concerns seriously. She mentioned care planning and financial protection." "Bryn, perfect. Once we get power of attorney, we can access all his accounts. The house alone is worth over $800,000. "Garrett, what about Carmen? She might get suspicious." "Bryn, Carmen trusts us. Besides, by the time she figures out what's happening, it'll be too late." I stopped the recording and looked at my son and daughter-in-law. Garrett's face was red with shame and anger. Bryn looked like she was calculating her escape routes. "There are 12 more recordings like that," I said. "Plus documentation of every time you drugged my food or drinks, photographs of the medications you've been using, and medical analysis of what those drugs have been doing to my system." Dr. Patel found her voice. "Mr. Henderson, are you saying your family has been deliberately giving you medications without your knowledge?" "Not just giving me medications, doctor. Poisoning me. With the intention of having me declared mentally incompetent so they could steal my life savings." I handed her another folder. "This contains medical test results showing traces of lorazepam and other substances in my system, despite the fact that you've never prescribed these medications for me. It also contains analysis from Dr. Lester Kowalski confirming that the symptoms they've been reporting are consistent with medication-induced cognitive impairment." Bryn finally spoke up. "This is ridiculous. He's obviously having some kind of paranoid episode." "Dad, you're not thinking clearly." "Actually, I'm thinking more clearly than I have in weeks, now that I've stopped consuming anything you've prepared for me." I turned to Dr. Patel. "Doctor, I'd like you to call my attorney, Veronica Thorne. She's standing by with representatives from the district attorney's office." "Dad, stop," Garrett said, desperation creeping into his voice. "We can work this out. We're family." "Family," I repeated. "Yes, let's talk about family. A real family member doesn't drug their elderly father to steal his money. A real family member doesn't lie to doctors and manipulate children and destroy someone's life for financial gain." I stood up and pulled out one final document. "This is a restraining order preventing either of you from coming within 500 feet of my home, and a court order freezing any access you might have had to my financial accounts. It's also a formal complaint of elder abuse that will be forwarded to both criminal and civil authorities." The room was silent except for the sound of Bryn crying. Not tears of remorse, I noticed, but tears of frustration that their plan had failed. Dr. Patel was staring at the documents I'd given her. "Mr. Henderson, I need to ask, how long have you known about this?" 3 weeks, I said. "My granddaughter overheard them planning it and warned me." "And you've been pretending to be affected by the medications this entire time?" "I'm an engineer, doctor. When I discover a problem, I gather data before I implement a solution." Garrett finally broke down. "Dad, I'm sorry. We're in so much debt, and when Mom died, we thought you had more money than you needed, and we could just..." "You could just what?" "Steal it. Destroy my mind to take my life's work." "We weren't going to hurt you permanently," Bryn said through her tears. "We just needed temporary guardianship to get through our financial crisis." "Temporary?" I laughed bitterly. "You were giving me enough psychiatric medication to cause permanent brain damage. There's nothing temporary about what you were doing to me." Dr. Patel excused herself to make some phone calls, leaving me alone with my son and daughter-in-law. The silence stretched on for several minutes before Garrett spoke. "What happens now?" Now you face the consequences of your choices. Criminal charges for elder abuse, fraud, and conspiracy. Civil suits for damages. And you lose any claim you might have had to my estate." "What about Sage?" Bryn asked. For the first time since this whole nightmare began, I felt a pang of real sadness. "Sage will be fine. Carmen is filing for temporary custody while you two sort out your legal problems. And depending on how you handle what comes next, she might get permanent custody." "Dad, please," Garrett said. "I know we messed up, but we're still your family." I looked at my son, really looked at him. I saw the boy I'd taught to ride a bike, the teenager I'd helped with homework, the young man I'd walked down the aisle at his wedding. But I also saw the person who had been willing to poison me to steal my money. "No, Garrett. You stopped being my family the moment you decided my life was worth less than your debts." Over the next few months, the legal process unfolded exactly as Veronica had predicted. Bryn was charged with multiple felonies and eventually sentenced to 3 years in prison. Garrett cooperated with prosecutors and received a lighter sentence, 18 months in prison and 5 years probation, but their marriage didn't survive the stress. Carmen was awarded full custody of Sage, and I made sure she had everything she needed to provide a stable home for my granddaughter. Sage adjusted better than I'd expected, though she still asks questions about why her parents made bad choices. As for me, I discovered something I hadn't expected. I'm actually happier now than I was before this whole nightmare began. Removing toxic people from your life, even when they're family, can be incredibly liberating. I've become an advocate for elder abuse awareness, speaking at community centers and senior living facilities about the warning signs and legal protections available. It turns out that what happened to me is far more common than most people realize. I also updated my estate planning to include specific protections against financial abuse and manipulation. The bulk of my money will go into a trust for Sage's education and Carmen's family, with strict guidelines about how it can be used. But perhaps most importantly, I learned that standing up for yourself isn't just about protecting your money or your rights, it's about protecting your dignity and your value as a human being. The hardest lesson I learned was that blood doesn't guarantee loyalty, but standing up for yourself guarantees respect. If this story of family betrayal and ultimate justice resonated with you, make sure you're subscribed to Revenge Extraordinary for more stories that prove revenge is a dish best served calculated. 6 months after the confrontation in Dr. Patel's office, I ran into Garrett at the grocery store. He looked older, thinner, and genuinely remorseful. We talked for a few minutes, awkwardly, but without the anger that had dominated our last conversation. "Dad, I know I can't undo what I did," he said. "But I want you to know that I'm getting help. Therapy, financial counseling, everything." "That's good, Garrett. I hope it helps. Do you think, someday, we might be able to have some kind of relationship again?" I considered his question carefully. "I don't know. Trust is like a complex piece of machinery. Once it's broken, you can sometimes repair it, but it's never quite the same as it was before." He nodded, understanding that this wasn't a no, but it wasn't a yes either. As I drove home that day, I thought about forgiveness and family and the complicated math of human relationships. I may never have the same relationship with Garrett that I had before, but I also no longer wake up every morning wondering if the people closest to me are plotting against me. Sometimes the best revenge isn't about punishment, it's about refusing to let someone else's bad choices define your life. I protected what mattered most, my granddaughter, my dignity, and my right to live my final years on my own terms. And that, more than any amount of money, is worth fighting for.